Hello and welcome. Welcome to Thriving in Higher Education podcast. Today, we are going to share some great tips on assertive communication because we know that one thing that's preventing us from really um, being just relaxed and thrilled with every day is when we have difficult conversations with our colleagues. And so we're going to present to you a couple of the tips from the from our book, Thriving in Higher Education Careers, which has a series of tips on different kinds of communication, assertive communication, dealing with difficult people, and so forth. And it provides practical tips right here in this book. And we're just going to look at a couple of them here today, a couple of two strategies. So Yvette, starting with you, um, what would you recommend in terms of assertive communication?
Sure. One of the tips that we talk about with assertive communication, we just had a great podcast with a spotlight guest from our book. I'm so happy to have her. That was Betty Webster. And she talked about assertive communication and was really uh, very, I guess, exciting to hear all the tips and suggestions that she gave and the practical use in her field. And so, building on one of the things that we talked about on the podcast, I'm going to talk about the tip that I selected. And that was tip number 2. And it talks about think about what you really want. So, I was really inspired by her podcast and when she talked about her experience. And sometimes when we want to be assertive and we expect people to know what we want. We know what we want. So sometimes if you have to go talk to someone, a supervisor or a colleague or someone on a committee with you in higher education, and maybe there's certain things you want to be, you want to do, but they may not know. You know, going into the meeting sometimes, hey, I want to take on this role. I want to do that. I want to do that project. Do not assume that people know what you want. So we have to be clear in defining our needs and what we want. And we cannot assume that people always know what you want. And then we have to do it in a way, as Betty said, we have to listen and be respectful and be professional because that's what you want in return. You want the same thing in return. So being assertive and talking about what you want and do not assume that people know it. And one of the things on a podcast with Betty, I had mentioned about a quote and I want to actually read this because I had mentioned very briefly about a quote and I didn't have the exact wording. So I want to read from the book. And the quote that I was talking about, at least I got it right by Angela when I quoted this. It says, I learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. So even if we are being assertive in our communication, we have to think about how we make people feel and how we want to feel at the end of the day. So that's my tip is to think about what you want, be assertive and communicate that to other people what you want, but do it in a way where you're still being professional and you're still being respectful and you're still listening.
So thank you. I'd like to share a strategy once you've figured out what you want, the number one thing that you want at that moment. One strategy of assertive communication is, getting beyond the no. So we know that we can make a request and they'll say, oh, no, we can't, you can't do that because XYZ. And then we, are um, not looking forward to that conversation because they're just going to say no and et cetera, et cetera. So what you can engage in is a much more successful strategy, and it's called the broken record. So for example, you might say, I am maxed out. I cannot take on any more committee assignments as though that is my goal. And the chair of the department has called me in, and I know exactly what it's going to be. It's going to be one more committee assignment, and I don't want to do that. So I'm going to try the broken record. So the The chair calls you in. You go in there, and she says, "Well, Estelle, I'd like to put you on so and so's tenure review committee." And you say, "I can't be put on any more committees at this time." And she says, "Oh, but you're so good at it. You're so thorough. You're so conscientious." And you say, "I'm sorry, but I can't be put on any more committees this semester." And she says, "Oh no, but so and so is on sabbatical this semester, so we don't have any backup." "I'm sorry to hear that, but I can't be put on any more committee assignments this semester. So no matter what they say, you're coming back with an earnestly stated um, uh, no." And the shocking thing is, I have tried this method, and I did get two following um, pleas to do it, but after I said no 3 times, then they just dropped it. So it does work, very powerful, and you can feel very calm and practiced doing it because you came up with your strategy beforehand, and then um, you're less likely to get that unwanted committee assignment. So that's my tip that I wanted to share. It's called the broken record.
I love that tip, the broken record, because sometimes we will give in and people will say, well, I do this and can you do that? And we'll say no, but then they don't give up. And then sometimes we sort of cave in. So I love that, putting yourself first and becoming that broken record. So thank you for sharing that. And maybe one day we'll do the whole role play. We should try that one day instead of, I'll play the part of it and the chairperson or whatever part you want me to play, and you play the part of Estelle. So give a, that may be one of the future podcasts. So tune in. We may actually do some role play for these tips and suggestions one day. So thank you all very much. Remember, there's more information in our book, other tips and other topics that we think you will find to be very interesting and very relevant. So thank you all for joining this episode. Bye. I believe in you.
And I believe in you. Thank you.